Hello, everyone, and welcome to Musing, music for the adventurous listener here on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor. Thanks for joining me for this hour of music, conversation, and ideas. Today, I am in conversation with Brazilian-Canadian composer Maria Eduarda Mendes Martins. Currently based in Toronto, Maria Eduarda's music aims to reflect the multidimensionality of her world and culture, with her pieces examining what is complex and what is simple, what is old and what is new. While composing, Maria Eduarda feels as though she can shape time, as a sculptor shapes clay. Growing up in Brazil, Maria Eduarda did not have access to musical education until her adolescence. However, since then, she has gone on to obtain multiple degrees in composition, and she is currently completing a doctoral degree at the University of Toronto under Gary Kulesza. A rising star in the compositional world, Maria Eduarda's music has been performed by prominent orchestras and ensembles across 3 continents to date, with more performances undoubtedly on the horizon. Maria Eduarda, welcome to Musing. I'm so thrilled to be in conversation with you today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so thrilled to be here talking to you as well.
So we first encountered one another back in, I believe it was 2020. You are a participant in the Allegra Chamber Orchestra's Composer Incubator, and I had the opportunity to conduct and workshop and then live stream because COVID, your music as part of that program. And I have to say, it's been such a privilege and delight to watch your career blossom and take off since then.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy and an honor to participate in that inaugural edition of the program with you, and it's been such a important experience which I built from since then. And I was so happy that you actually got to perform the piece again just last year from our program with Allegra. So that was really awesome too.
Yeah, that was so nice to revisit those COVID pieces that needed to come to light in the real world. And such an extraordinary piece that we really enjoyed working on it, Reflections of Ave Generosa. And it felt beautifully written, especially for us.
Thank you. I had you in my mind for every note that I wrote. And the musicians of Allegra, and working with Dorothy was so instructive. I learned from the best.
Shout out to Dorothy Chang, who is one of the mentors for the Composer Incubator, like women helping women and uplifting women as a key component of the Composer Incubator. So for folks that have yet to hear your music, how would you describe your compositional voice and creative approach?
That's a good question. My compositional voice and approach mixes complexity and simplicity, I would say. The prime materials, the basic materials, melodies, rhythms, etc., that I use for my music tend to be simpler, and also in terms of sonic composition of the material, they tend to be straightforward. But I try to give depth to these simpler materials through the construction that I put them in the piece. So there's lots of process in my music as well, very process-oriented. I think I make a distinction in my mind between complexity and depth, in that my understanding, not everything that sounds complex is deep, and vice versa. So in order to test that idea, I try to have simple sounds and compose something that sounds really deep with them.
And where does that process come from? Now, is that a combination of your own experimentation with some of your schools of training and mentorship opportunities that rubbed off on you?
I would say, looking back in hindsight to pieces I composed in the past, maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, my tendency to write process music was already there. But I didn't have a system, a conscious system that I used for them. I was just experimenting with ideas. So the piece that is going to be played by the Calgary Phil in September, I composed it between 2019 and 2020 into the new year. And in that moment, I had already graduated from my master's. I just wanted to write a piece for orchestra, just to have it for myself. And I wanted to, again, experiment this idea of simplicity, having simple materials, but orchestrating them in a way that I hadn't learned about in the past, which means that I wanted the melodic line that I used for this piece to travel around back and forth in the instrumental roles of the orchestra. And the counterpoint of that very horizontal line that travels back and forth happens because I wrote it in different speeds and in different intonations at the same time. So it gives an effect that the line is echoing throughout the piece and into the orchestra. The further back the musicians are sitting and the lower the instruments are, the bigger the echo, basically.
Oh, interesting. So using the spatial effect of the orchestra as well.
Exactly. The piece was recorded in studio in that year. And when I heard back the result of that piece, the sonic result of the piece, I felt like I could do more with it. ever since I started my doctoral degree, I've dedicated my doctoral degree to develop on this idea. I gave it a name, and I basically laid out all the ways in which I could develop this idea.
Wow, how fascinating. So that piece is a culmination of literally years of building blocks and creative experimentation.
Yeah, I would say that this piece that will be played next month was the beginning of a long process of discovery for me and growth and development.
You're a relatively new Canadian as of 2023, but you bring Brazilian culture and lived experience and musical aesthetics to everything you compose. How has this influenced your music that you're writing today?
That's an interesting question, and I think it comes down to this process-oriented way of composing. The way in which my music relates to the culture of my country of birth, Brazil, is more conceptual, I would say, than sonic, in the sense that my process of composing takes into consideration doing a lot, creating a lot of sound from very limited materials. And I get the sense that Brazilian culture also has this creativity and this, what's the word I'm trying to, this resourcefulness of having some prime material or some idea that can be very basic and build from it in all sorts of ways. So I think the way my music reflects my culture is by exploring ways of doing a lot with a little. It's a matter of resourcefulness in a way.
I like that. Were there certain challenges or turning points in your life that shaped your career, or things that you wanted to pursue or directions that you wanted to take with composition?
Yes, I would say so. But it's hard to gather these moments in my mind because sometimes they happen very quickly or they happen sporadically here and there. I can say, actually, so much of my work is inspired by early music. And by early music, pre-Baroque, pre-Renaissance, actually, kind of medieval, which is choice that not everybody makes usually or commonly. So I'd say more or less around that time as well, 2019, I started feeling I wanted to consistently have that source of inspiration in my music, and I felt like I would probably feel pressure to compose in one way or another way.
Well, tell us about your current projects and coming premieres that you are hard at work on.
Sure. So this summer, actually, I composed 2 pieces so far. One of them is for a performance that hasn't been made public yet. It will be presented and performed by Soundstreams here in Toronto. You should stay tuned on their website for more information.
Will do.
The performance is coming up in November. And the other piece I composed was for a duo of baritone and 2 friends of mine from Paris, and programmed the piece to sing it in a competition, to perform it in a competition in Paris in October. Thank you. Yeah, the piece was programmed for the final round. You know, I'm cheering, rooting for them from here.
That's right, that they get to the finals and you get a premiere in France.
That's right. And also, I have every confidence that they will be able to make it because they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But only having my name on their program there is very much an honor.
Mm-hmm.
I was also the first mentee for an inaugural project by the Canadian Art Song Project.
Oh, they do great work.
They're launching a mentorship program for composers.
How wonderful.
And so I will be working with them this year and the next, and I will write a song cycle for them.
Oh, that's brilliant. And they are such an incredible, force on the Canadian music scene and create wonderful projects.
They really are.
茄汁雞排意粉，茄汁雞排意粉，茄汁雞排意粉，茄汁雞排意粉。
I'm super curious. We've talked quite a bit about material, but then we talked about kind of these specific commissions that are, very personal to the artist or the ensemble. How does that work for you? Do you come up with the material first, or do you take your inspiration from the commissioner, or a combination of both?
Oh, in terms of compositional process?
Yeah, and your inspiration and how you derive your material.
Yes, a little bit comes from the commissioner for sure. I do like giving directions in terms of project or what it will look like. For example, if the piece has a theme, I enjoy developing on that theme or on that idea. I find that process to be very creative as well. And also, I like the idea or the challenge of like getting a pre-existing prompt or theme and try to make it my own. Like, how can I get this idea that someone gave me and turn it into something that is my music? So I do enjoy being prompted like that, but usually when I'm composing, my compositional process comes from an idea first. So I write it down as if I were writing a journal, and I write what I want to do and how, and I keep becoming more and more precise in my little notes. And by the time I get to the score, I already know how the piece is going to sound from beginning to end.
That's brilliant. That's mad skills.
It's enjoyable for me. I have learned to do it during my master's degree and never really stopped using that method.
Right. We all kind of have to come up with our own means of creating and our own processes.
Exactly.
In order to get to our finished product. What does a successful collaboration between an artist and composer or ensemble and composer look like?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. There's one thing that I started learning as my pieces get second and third performances, which is the how widely different the same piece can sound when performed by two different performers or groups. And I really love that aspect of being a composer. It's like the surprises that you can get even when the piece is thoroughly notated. Different people will do it completely differently, and I find that very exciting. So in the same way, I find it really rewarding to be able to have communication with my performers in the sense of how do you interpret this piece? What do you think about it? And I like to hear their ideas of, what they see in the score. Sometimes performers will see things in my score that I didn't see, that I didn't notice. Yeah, in terms of interpretation, really, not necessarily in terms of corrections, but like this reminds me of light and darkness. Were you thinking about that when you composed? And not necessarily, but that's true.
Or perhaps, something subconscious, rather, made its way into your work and they're picking up on it.
Exactly. I love how sometimes performers will see the subconscious aspect of composing and they will tell you. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's true.
It's a very human experience.
Exactly.
Writing and composing and then having it realized by another group of humans that, resonating with it.
Exactly. And I really love how our community of performers and composers and orchestras around the world gather so many people for the sake of making music. You get all these people together in a room to rehearse a piece of music or to compose together or to collaborate for a new piece of music. Sometimes I keep thinking about the power that music has to engage people, to get people together for a common goal, which is to make music. Like these people could be dedicating themselves to doing anything else at that moment. And in a moment that we're going through right now, which can be so scary in many different ways, it's good to know that people get together to make music.
Truly, absolutely. It's so rare in this day and age that we even gather as humans in one place with a common goal. And when the common goal is to experience something beautiful or to be moved and to experience with other people, I always find that really, really moving. No matter how many times I step on stage to conduct, I look out into the orchestra and I look out into the audience. It's tremendously rewarding and such a gift.
Exactly, yeah. And if you stop and think that, music will do that, you start realizing the power they have on us, I think.
What do you hope that people take away from the experience of your work, whether they're, in the audience listening live or listening to it on a recording, or if they're performers, interacting with the notes on the page?
I hope that people will get a sense of depth, a sense that they're looking into something that can give them more than they might experience in the first listen. Like, I hope they will try to find some time to listen to it again and then maybe listen to something different the second time around. I do hope that every time someone listens to my piece of music, they might listen to a little different thing that they didn't listen to before. And to get a sense of wonder, I aim for beauty in my music, but I also aim for the sense of there is something more that can be discovered about music. The sense like, I guess I haven't heard everything yet. I guess I haven't seen everything yet. There is something else that I can hope to listen to the next time.
I always say that music is a lifelong apprenticeship, that you can never learn too much. There'll always be just miles of amazing music to explore.
Absolutely. Yes. And I do hope, that my music will have its own life. I do enjoy when my pieces just get programmed and then I discover about it. Because it makes me feel like my music is having its own life. And I like that. I would be very happy I could see my music living me. I want my music to have its own life.
Beautiful. Well, I think that's a really wonderful place to leave it for today. Maria Eduarda Mendes Martins, thank you so much for being my guest today on Musing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
This has been Musing on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor. Thank you so much for joining me for this celebration of music, creators, and ideas. Musing is a production of the Canadian Music Centre Prairie Region and is heard right here in Calgary and on all major podcast platforms. As we end our time together, we recognize that there are more than 630 First Nations communities across the lands that we now know of as Canada, representing 50 distinct nations and Indigenous languages. In addition, there are Métis in every province of the country and 53 Inuit communities speaking different dialects of Inuktitut across the north. We acknowledge them as the original music makers, dancers, creators, and caretakers of our lands, and they continue to inspire and teach us as we commit to learning and moving forward together. Until next time, thanks for listening and for supporting Canadian musicians and artists in your community. I will leave you now with more music of Maria Eduarda Mendes Martins. Take care.